The first time Pablo Escobar appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine, many saw him as the ultimate success story, a self-made billionaire from Colombia. But behind the fortune was one of the deadliest criminal empires the world had ever seen. His organization flooded continents with cocaine, corrupted governments, and left thousands of people dead. For years, he seemed untouchable. To some, he was a ruthless murderer. To others, a modern-day Robin Hood who built homes and football fields for the poor. But every empire built on violence eventually reaches its breaking point. This is the true story of Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, the rise, the reign, and the violent fall of the king of cocaine. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1st, 1949, in the rural town of Rio Negro, Colombia, before his family settled in Medellin. His father was a farmer and his mother worked as a school teacher. Colombia during the 1950s and 1960s was a country marked by political instability, poverty, and growing inequality. Medellin, where Pablo spent much of his youth, was rapidly expanding, but opportunities for young people from poor families remained limited. From an early age, Escobar showed an unusual ambition. Friends later recalled that he often talked about becoming rich, no matter the cost. While many dreamed of respectable careers, Pablo became fascinated with money itself. As a teenager, he reportedly sold stolen examination papers, forged documents, and smuggled small amounts of contraband. Whether every story from his youth is true remains uncertain, but by the late 1960s, he had already entered the criminal underworld. His crimes quickly escalated. He became involved in stealing cars, selling counterfeit lottery tickets, and running various black market schemes. Violence soon became part of his business model. Rivals who stood in his way frequently disappeared. Escobar learned an early lesson that would define the rest of his life. Fear could be just as valuable as money. During the early 1970s, a new opportunity emerged. Demand for cocaine in the United States was growing rapidly. At the time, marijuana trafficking was already profitable, but cocaine promised unimaginable wealth. Escobar recognized the opportunity before many others. He began working with local traffickers, transporting small quantities before gradually expanding his operations. Instead of relying on others, Escobar built his own supply chain. Coca leaves were processed into cocaine in laboratories hidden deep inside the jungles of Colombia. Pilots flew shipments across the Caribbean into Central America, Mexico, and eventually the United States. Every stage of production came under his control. By the late 1970s, Escobar had become one of the founding leaders of what became known as the Medellín Cartel. Alongside several powerful traffickers, he transformed cocaine smuggling into a multinational enterprise. Their organization operated with military precision. Couriers, pilots, accountants, chemists, gunmen, lawyers, and corrupt officials all played carefully assigned roles. The profits were unlike anything the criminal world had ever seen. Hundreds of millions of dollars poured in every month. Eventually, the cartel was reportedly earning tens of billions of dollars annually. Escobar became one of the richest men on earth. Some estimates placed his fortune at more than $30 billion during the height of his power. The amount of cash became so enormous that storing it became a problem. Warehouses, secret bunkers, and rural hideouts overflowed with stacks of American dollars. Cartel members later claimed that millions were lost each year to moisture, mold, insects, and rats because they simply could not spend or hide the money fast enough. With extraordinary wealth came extraordinary influence. Escobar purchased luxurious estates, private aircraft, yachts, expensive cars, and entire properties across Colombia. One of his most famous estates was Hacienda Nápoles, an enormous ranch complete with artificial lakes, exotic animals, private airstrips, and extravagant entertainment facilities. Imported elephants, giraffes, zebras, ostriches, and hippopotamuses roamed the property. Decades later, the descendants of those hippos would still inhabit Colombia's rivers. Yet Escobar understood something many criminals overlooked. Money alone could not protect him forever. Public support could. Throughout Medellin, he financed the construction of housing projects for poor families. He funded football fields, schools, roads, churches, and community centers. Thousands of people who had been forgotten by the government suddenly received homes through Escobar's generosity. Many residents viewed him not as a criminal, but as a benefactor. This carefully cultivated image earned him lasting loyalty. In neighborhoods where police officers were unwelcome, Escobar's supporters often warned him about raids or investigators. Entire communities became his eyes and ears. At the same time, another strategy protected his empire: corruption. Escobar developed what became known as the policy of plata o plomo, silver or lead, a simple choice faced by judges, police officers, politicians, customs officials, and journalists: accept a bribe or face assassination. Many accepted the money. Those who refused often paid with their lives. The policy worked frighteningly well. Government agencies became infiltrated by corruption. Information about investigations routinely leaked to the cartel before authorities could act. Witnesses disappeared, evidence vanished, entire cases collapsed. By the early 1980s, Escobar's power reached into politics. He even secured election as an alternate member of Colombia's Congress. Appearing in suits instead of military clothing, he attempted to present himself as a respectable businessman and public servant. But investigative journalists began exposing the truth about his criminal activities. Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla became one of Escobar's most vocal opponents. After publicly denouncing him, Lara was assassinated in 1984 by cartel gunmen. The murder shocked Colombia and marked a turning point. Escobar was no longer merely a wealthy smuggler. He had openly declared war on the Colombian state. As pressure increased, the Colombian government negotiated an extradition treaty with the United States. For Escobar, extradition represented his greatest fear. He famously declared that he would rather have a grave in Colombia than a prison cell in America. Stopping extradition became one of his highest priorities. The years that followed plunged Colombia into unprecedented violence. Judges were murdered, police officers were hunted, journalists became targets, presidential candidates were assassinated, entire government buildings came under attack. One of the darkest moments occurred in 1985 when the Palace of Justice in Bogotá was seized by the M19 guerrilla movement. Although historians continue debating the full extent of Escobar's involvement, multiple investigations concluded that cartel interests benefited from the destruction of court records related to extradition cases. The violence escalated further. In November 1989, Avianca Flight 203 exploded shortly after takeoff from Bogotá. The bombing killed all 107 people aboard, along with several people on the ground. Authorities concluded that the attack was intended to assassinate presidential candidate César Gaviria, who was expected to board the flight but changed his plans at the last minute. Gaviria survived because he never entered the aircraft. Weeks later, another massive bomb destroyed the headquarters of Colombia's intelligence agency in Bogotá, killing dozens and injuring hundreds more. Bombings became almost routine. Shopping centers, newspaper offices, government buildings, and public spaces all became potential targets. Fear spread throughout Colombia. Ordinary citizens no longer knew whether they would return home safely after work. Despite the bloodshed, Escobar remained difficult to capture. His security network stretched across the country. Thousands worked directly or indirectly for the cartel. Lookouts monitored police movements. Radio communications warned of approaching raids. Hidden tunnels and safe houses allowed Escobar to disappear within minutes. The United States increased its involvement by providing intelligence, surveillance technology, and support to Colombian authorities. Specialized police units known as the Search Bloc were formed with the single objective of capturing Pablo Escobar. The pursuit became one of the largest manhunts in modern history. Yet in 1991, something extraordinary happened. Facing mounting pressure, Escobar negotiated his surrender. The agreement stunned many observers. Instead of being placed inside a traditional prison, Escobar agreed to imprison himself inside a facility he personally designed. The prison became known as La Catedral. Located on a hillside overlooking Medellin, it looked less like a prison and more like a private luxury resort. It contained comfortable bedrooms, a football field, barbecue areas, a waterfall, and panoramic views. Friends, family members, business associates, and even women reportedly entered and left with minimal restrictions. From inside La Catedral, Escobar continued directing cartel operations almost as if nothing had changed. The arrangement eventually collapsed. When Colombian authorities discovered that Escobar had ordered the torture and murder of several associates inside the prison, they decided to transfer him to a real detention facility. Before the transfer could occur, Escobar escaped in July 1992. His disappearance reignited the manhunt. This time, the government refused to negotiate. Search Bloc forces intensified operations across Colombia. American intelligence agencies increased surveillance support. Electronic intercepts became more sophisticated. Every phone call, courier, and financial transaction became a potential clue. Meanwhile, Escobar's empire was falling apart. Many of his closest allies had been arrested or killed. The rival Cali cartel gained influence. Former associates turned against him. Perhaps the most controversial force to emerge during this period was Los Pepes, a shadowy vigilante group whose name stood for People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar. The organization targeted Escobar's associates, properties, and financial network. While its exact relationships remain debated, investigations later suggested that some members cooperated with Colombian security forces and received intelligence that helped weaken Escobar's organization. One by one, safe houses disappeared. Trusted allies became liabilities. Financial resources dwindled. For the first time in years, Pablo Escobar was constantly on the run. Separated from much of his organization, he spent months moving between secret locations. Despite repeated warnings, he occasionally contacted members of his family by telephone. Investigators realized these calls created opportunities. On December 2nd, 1993, one day after his 44th birthday, Escobar made another call to his family from a house in the Los Olivos neighborhood of Medellin. Colombian authorities, using electronic surveillance, traced the signal. Search Bloc officers rapidly surrounded the building. Escobar attempted to escape across the rooftops alongside his bodyguard, Alvaro de Jesus Agudelo, known as El Limón. A gun battle erupted. Within minutes, both men were dead. Photographs taken afterward showed officers standing triumphantly beside Escobar's body on a rooftop. Exactly who fired the fatal shot remains debated. Officially, Colombian police killed him during the firefight. Some members of Escobar's family later argued that he took his own life rather than surrender, pointing to his long-stated intention never to be captured alive. Definitive proof has never resolved the question. His death marked the symbolic end of the Medellin cartel's dominance, but the cocaine trade did not disappear. Other organizations quickly filled the vacuum. The Cali cartel expanded. Mexican trafficking organizations gained increasing control over international distribution routes. Global cocaine trafficking continued despite Escobar's fall. Today, Pablo Escobar remains one of the most recognizable criminals in history. His life has inspired countless books, documentaries, films, and television series. In Medellin, opinions about him remain deeply divided. Some remember the homes he financed and the assistance he provided to impoverished communities. Others remember family members murdered by bombings, assassinations, kidnappings, and cartel violence. The true legacy of Pablo Escobar cannot be measured solely by the billions of dollars he accumulated or the empire he built. It is measured in the thousands of lives shattered by addiction, corruption, terrorism, and murder. His rise demonstrated how organized crime could challenge an entire nation. His fall showed that even the most powerful criminal empire could not escape relentless pursuit forever. The king of cocaine built an empire that reshaped the global drug trade, but in the end, the violence that secured his power also ensured his destruction, leaving behind a legacy that Colombia and much of the world still struggles to forget. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing for more carefully researched true crime stories based on verified facts, court records, and official investigations. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, And remember that the most unsettling mysteries are often the ones hidden in plain sight.